We are finally live. Honestly, I'm very sorry for the delay, everyone. We just had some bad Wi-Fi issues. The Ethernet wasn't working, and we ultimately figured it out, but I'm sorry for getting the plane off the ground a little behind schedule. But what's going on, Broncos country? Thank you so much for hanging out with us live here for a Broncos Breakdown show, where we are going to recap some of the roundup from the NFL draft, right? Some of the spillage, if you will, coming out of NFL draft weekend, where we have some draft grades from the blue check marks of the sports media world. Plus, I thought we could take a look at some free agent targets for Denver because they went into the draft with some needs and they only had 5 picks, so they could not satisfy everything they wanted to do. So might they turn to free agency now that the draft is over and they want to fill out the rest of their 90-man roster? So we got that on tap for everyone today, plus a mailbag as always. So with that being said, first things first, shout out your city. Where are you guys tuning in from? The good people of the Broncos Breakdown who have been oh so patient with me trying to get the show off the ground. We are here. So let me know where you are tuning in from. I'm going to give a shout out to every single person that lets me know where they are watching from. That way I can give back to those of you who took time out of your day to come hang out with me. So let's see where everyone is tuning in from today. Hop in the chat right now and let me know where you are watching from. We've got Amarillo, Texas. I once drove through Amarillo, Texas. I wanted to go to that one restaurant that has the ginormous steak. I thought we were going to get there like 9 p.m. I was like, there's not going to be that long of a line for 9 p.m. I was wrong. So we substituted and went to Texas Roadhouse, which honestly may have been better. Richard's in Denver. Tyler J is tuning in from Miami, Florida. Let me know where you're watching from. We've got Payton from Putnam County. Tyler, Texas. LA from Victory Lap. We got a lot of Broncos fans from all over the country. Texas, Colorado, Pacific to the Atlantic. LA with Eric Brown. Let me know where you guys are watching from. Always love to see how far and wide this fan base stretches. Peyton, give me a go Denver Broncos. Love it, Peyton. Good stuff coming from you. Now, we're going to talk about a State of the Union, if you will, after the draft, right? What is going on with the Broncos? What do they need? What did they address? How do we feel about this roster? All that good stuff as Eric Hernandez tunes in from Aurora, Colorado. But first, what's your confidence level in Russell Wilson right now? The reason why I bring this up is I am frankly a little bit surprised they did not draft a quarterback. Now, we saw a run of quarterbacks go early day 3, and maybe Denver wanted to be in that run, but they were surprised to see, Dorian Thompson-Robinson maybe go a bit earlier than they were expecting. Aiden O'Connell went to the Raiders on the earlier side, so maybe they were banking on some of those guys being there in round 6, so they had to, call an audible. But with Denver not picking a quarterback, does make you think that they are maybe a bit more confident in Russell Wilson past just 2023 than I was at least a few weeks ago. Because I thought there was a 100% chance they would at least take a shot at a QB. In case things do not improve for Russ, they can maybe get a head start on the replacement search party. So with that being said, what's our confidence level at? 1 through 10, 1 being it couldn't be any lower, right? It's even worse than last year. 10 being he's going to get back to the Russell Wilson we all thought we were getting when Denver made that blockbuster trade, and he's going to be an MVP caliber quarterback. Paul's at a 6. Jawan's at an 8. We got Scipio at a 7. I like it. We got some more confidence than maybe I have. I'm probably at a solid 5.4. And I don't think I'm crazy for being that low, right? I didn't see a lot from last season to believe that he is going to go a 180 with Sean Payton. We did see a change once that fraud Hackett was fired. But there was still a lot of football that was played before then that did not make me believe Russell Wilson is going to get back to what he once was. And maybe I'm more pessimistic than others. Maybe I'm, out of bounds for being this less optimistic, but that's just where I'm standing right now. Andre's at a 10. We have found Russell Wilson's burner. What's up, Russ? Happy to see you tuning in. Eric's at a 5. All right, just keep getting those comments in. Tyler J, a 6 probably. Would have loved the UCLA quarterback, DTR. I'm with you there. The Browns got a good one in my opinion. I'm not crazy about Max Duggan. He should have stayed another year at TCU. I don't think he's going to have much of a role in the NFL. I'm sorry, Max. Nice guy, I'm sure. Probably going to be a quarterback coach in Fort Worth in a couple of years for the Horned Frogs. So we're going to switch gears here and talk a little bit free agency. While we let the audience build up as we like to do at the start of the show, who should the Broncos sign? Is there a free agent out there that you are begging for the Paytons to pick up the phone and make a call and get them to Mile High? Might it be a defensive lineman? They did not add to that unit. They added Zach Allen in free agency, but you lost Draymond Jones, and you've got, a defensive line that doesn't get me very inspired. I like DJ Jones. I like-ish Zach Allen, but let's not pretend like they're getting Zach Allen, who's a double-digit sack guy, right? I don't think there's anyone on this roster right now who I can confidently say is going to get more than 10 sacks in 2023. Maybe Randy Gregory, but that means he would have to play a full season. Baron Browning, is he a double-digit sack guy? I think he's peaking at like 8 or 9 sacks a season, right? He's going to be a Robin for someone for a long time, and he's going to be a very good one too. But maybe they want to go get a Yannick Ngakoue, a Frank Allen, a Leonard Floyd, right? Someone who can really get after the quarterback. So JKM saying bring back Shelby Harris. You're going to like today's video. I included Shelby Harris in my free agent targets. I would like Stetson Bennett to come to the Denver Broncos. Payton, are you trolling me? Because I had a year-long bet with our Bears host here at Chat Sports, Harrison Graham, about Stetson Bennett not getting drafted, and I melted to the floor when the Rams took him in the 4th round. Way too early. The LA Rams, pros and cons. Con, they took Stetson Bennett. Pro, Stetson Bennett ensures they will have the number 1 pick in next year's draft to get Caleb Williams. So maybe it's one big plan all along. We do have a mailbag, by the way, at the end of the show. So if you've got any questions about the Broncos after the draft, whatever it may be, from trades to free agent targets to just honest questions about the new draft class, use hashtag Broncos. Or if you want to super chat, get ahead of everyone, guarantee a spot on screen. It's more or less skipping the line, if you will. So if you want to super chat to guarantee a spot on screen, by all means, feel free to do so. Or if you like the show and you want to support the channel and help us get more studio time here at Chat Sports, super chats go a long way so I can tell my bosses, get the Broncos Breakdown some more live shows. So super chats are always greatly appreciated. With that being said, I think we're ready to show the menu. Let's show the menu. By the way, we got one of the best in the biz, Matthew McCullough, helping us out today. So clap it up for Tex right there. Coming up on today's show, we've got some draft winners and losers. I know it's the most cliche thing in the media, right? Winners and losers and grades are the backbone of sports media. But we are going to comb through some winners and losers for Denver coming out of Kansas City in the 2023 NFL Draft. Plus, I want to look at some free agent targets because you're going to see a flurry. We've already seen Jerick McKinnon and Poona Ford, for example, get signed in the last 48 hours. So we're going to check out some other free agent targets for Denver just in case they want to dip their toe in that pond. So with that being said, Mr. McCullough, I think we've got a green light to start the show. We can't start the show just yet, though. We get 75 people hanging out with us and just 17 likes. Do I have to recreate the whole Wolf of Wall Street scene? Rookie numbers. Pump those numbers up. We're at 17 likes. We're going to start the show once we get to 30. So look at it as going over to your friend's house. You take off your shoes when you walk in the door, right? Be a good guest here at the Broncos Breakdown. Hit that thumbs up button to help grow the channel, right? We all know the YouTube algorithm is she's a tough nut to crack, and we are always doing our best to try and figure out what gets the most viewers here so we can get more content for you guys. So liking the video definitely helps out. We're 2 likes away from 30, and then we will get this plane off the ground. Again, apologies, my fault for not getting the show on time for everyone today, but I appreciate everyone's patience and hanging out with us until we were ready to get things going. Boom, we got 30 likes. Eric Brown, thank you so much. Hey, why not be an overachiever? Shoot for extra credit. Let's get to 50 likes next. We ready, Big Tex? Okay. Let's, where Where we at? Let me look at my own script here. We got the CO, the cold open. You ready? Yep. Okay. Here we go. Let's jump into, ladies and gentlemen, a live Broncos breakdown. Coming up on today's show, we're going to go back and look at some winners and losers for Denver coming out of the NFL draft, because you know how sports media works. It's grades and winners and losers. That is the backbone of the offseason media coverage. So I wanted to take a peek at who's coming out of the NFL draft in Denver's locker room with a smile on the face and who's coming out a little bit worried about their job. But before we do all that, we are in a sub battle right now with our Saints channel here at Chat Sports. So help us take down Saints now. They've got a big leadish on us, but I believe in Broncos country. So hit that sub button down below if you want to win the Sean Payton trade, because this will be the unofficial but official marker of who wins the Sean Payton trade, a sub battle between our Saints channel at Chat Sports. Now, let's look at some winners and losers from the draft, right? We're just going to go through Denver's locker room a little bit, go through the roster, and who comes out of this draft feeling more confident about their spot on this team, their standing, right, where they are on the roster, trying to make the 53-man roster. So with that being said, my first winner for Denver, I'm going to go with Javonte Williams, because there was a real shot that Denver might have drafted a running back, and that would have made things a bit uncomfortable for Javonte Williams and where he stood in this locker room long term with more or less a new-ish regime. You still got the GM that drafted you, George Paton, but Sean Payton looks like he's the one calling the shots right now. So Javonte Williams is probably smiling right now because Denver did not draft a running back, right? He's got the Brian Drew from draft day, a smile on his face where they're so happy they didn't take Bo Callahan. So Williams, unfortunately, we all have to remember, he suffered a multiple knee ligament tears in week 4 against the Raiders. So it's not going to be a quick comeback for him, right? No one's got a good sense of when Javonte Williams will return. It's only May right now. There will be no football games until September, so they've got some time. But drafting a running back definitely would have signaled they might be looking to go a different direction at the RB position. Now, Troy Rank, who covers the team over at Channel 7, tweeting out back in February, as we're going to kind of go through a time machine here, Javonte Williams will remain in Denver this offseason as he continues his rehab from ACL surgery. He's in good spirits. I'm able to do everything they ask me to do. That's a good sign for a hell of a runner who was missed last season. That was February 13th. Remember that. Let's fast forward now. Coming out of the NFL Combine, Matthew Berry over at NBC Sports Now had a very intriguing write-up where he touched on Javonte Williams and added this. The most fascinating nugget about Denver, and possibly of the whole Combine, was about Javonte Williams' health, and I'm told there is a very wide range of possibilities regarding his return. There is a chance he is healthy to start the year. There is a chance he misses multiple games, and there is actually a chance he misses all of next year. I was told he is currently a lot more hurt than the team is letting on publicly, and that the Broncos are secretly nervous. Now, that was back in March 6th, so a lot has changed probably over the last 7-8 weeks or so as Denver formed their draft strategy, okay? And Chris Thomason, a new reporter for Denver, tweeting out back on April 20th, Broncos GM George Paton said running back Javonte Williams is doing well in his rehab. Says he'll be back this season at some point, but doesn't know when. Said if the best player available is a running back when Broncos draft, that could be a possibility at that spot. So I feel like there has been a surge of optimism and positivity around Javonte Williams, and maybe his return being on the sooner side than the later side, because they didn't draft a running back. And here on April 20th, George Paton is letting on that they expect him to play at some point. I still don't think that should be put down in stone, right? If Denver is off to a horrible start, they're not going to rush him back for the last couple of weeks if they're out of the playoff race. But Javonte Williams had a really promising rookie season, 903 yards, 7 touchdowns altogether. Unfortunately, didn't really get off to a great start last year, if we recall. And then, of course, the very, very serious knee injury he suffered in week 4 cut his year short. So I want to give the guy some morale boost, though, right? Show him some love from Broncos country. So spam 33, his jersey number, to show little Pookie some love. Let's let him know that Broncos country has his back, and they are wishing him a quick and speedy recovery. So with Javonte Williams being our winner, our number 1 winner at least, my first loser is actually not one individual. It's just wide receivers in general. Because once Denver drafted Marvin Mims, he's not a loser. But the other wide receivers, they got put on notice. Because that was their first pick in this draft class, right? Denver went wide receiver to start the draft. Marvin Mims, he ain't the loser. It's the other wide receivers that might be out of a job now that one more guy has been added to the mix. Now, Denver reportedly received multiple trade calls after they drafted Marvin Mims because a lot of GMs were connecting dots going, wait a minute, drafting a wide receiver to start this draft? Can you move on from Jeudy and Sutton? And what's the asking price? Now, reportedly, Denver is digging in. They want a first for Jeudy and a second for Sutton, and no one is offering either of those picks. But does Mims put Sutton or Jeudy or even Tim Patrick's future, not so much Jeudy, more so Sutton and Patrick's future at risk in Denver? Because Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick are both coming off, not down years. You can't have a down year if you're off an ACL injury, but seasons that maybe doesn't make it very promising that they're going to be here long term, right? Unfortunately, that's just the reality of suffering an ACL injury in the middle of your career. Now, I want to look at the wide receiver room from a more zoomed-in lens of locks to make the roster and bubble guys. Because let's say Denver takes 6 wide receivers. That's somewhat par for the course. Maybe 7, but let's go with 6. Well, Jeudy, Patrick, Sutton, and Mims, they are all locks. They have already got a roster spot for the 53-man roster. Now, I don't think KJ Hamler's a lock. I can't stand here today and say, without a doubt, he makes this roster. There is just a hint of a doubt, so I got to put him in the bubble tier. Marquez Callaway, I thought would be a lock, right? But if Jalen Virgil and Kendall Hinton in Montreal, Washington, along with Brandon Johnson, outplay Callaway, well, maybe he does lose that roster spot after being signed in free agency. Ultimately, if I had to pick 6 receivers right now, I think these are going to be your 6 53-man wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and I went with KJ Hamler, but I'm not confident in that one. And Marquez Callaway. Honestly, I'm more confident in Callaway than Hamler right now, but if you get more training camp injuries like we had last year, unfortunately, that could open up an extra roster spot. Now, let's take a look at Sutton and Patrick more specifically, right? Why does drafting Marvin Mims make them losers? Well, I'm looking ahead here, and I'm looking at their 2024 cap hits. And Courtland Sutton's is $17.3 million. And Tim Patrick's is $13 million. So if either of these players do not live up to their paychecks in 2023, Denver's going to take a good hard look at their contracts and go, we just drafted Marvin Mims last year at this point. He had a good, promising, whatever you want to call it, fill-in-the-blank rookie season. Maybe it's time to save some money, move on from one of these 2 players because Marvin Mims is ready to step into a bigger role in 2024. Before we look at my next winner or loser, make sure to check out the great deal over at Fanatics. Chatsports.com/DEN combo. Listen, we know that spring can always be a bit chilly in the Rocky Mountains, so they got a long sleeve t-shirt for you guys. But once summer rolls around and you want to wear a short sleeve Broncos t-shirt, they've got one as well. Plus, they're both on sale. So use our exclusive link right here, chatsports.com/DEN combo to get it today. Moving on, let's check out the next winner I've got. I'm going to go with number 3, Russell Wilson as my winner coming out of the draft. Denver did not pick a quarterback, and instead they did a lot of things to benefit Russell Wilson and make him a winner post-draft, right? Here are 3 reasons why I think Russ is a winner after Kansas City. 1, they added a speedy wide receiver. That's going to help Russell Wilson, right? That's going to stretch the field, and hopefully that's going to give him his Tyler Lockett in Denver that he really didn't have last year. Number 2, they did not draft a replacement for him, right? That's got to make Russell Wilson feel a lot more comfortable that they didn't go quarterback early in round 3, right? If they had traded up and instead of getting Riley Moss, they went QB, that would definitely send some signals to Russ's camp of, you better bring your A game, otherwise we are making investments elsewhere. And my third reason is they addressed the last need on the offensive line that they had, center. They went to get Alex Forsyth to improve the offensive line that allowed the second most sacks of any quarterback in 2022. So barring any major injuries, I think this new-ish regime with Sean Payton, who is the king now, he's giving Russell Wilson everything he really needs to be successful, right? New offensive play caller, revamped offensive line. I mean, talk about an investment in Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, drafting a center, completely redoing the offensive line, adding another wide receiver. A lot of things have gone Russ's way to make him successful in 2023, and we all hope he is. But if he's not, don't be shocked if they decide they're going to go a different direction after, hey, we got you a new offensive line. We used our first pick on a wide receiver, and we did not see a big upgrade from these numbers that he posted last season. 3,500 yards and 16 touchdowns, right? We did not just spend all this money on a new left guard and a new right tackle and go wide receiver, which we traded up to get, to give you all the keys to be successful just to have back-to-back down seasons. If that happens and everyone's healthy, wouldn't rule out a change at the quarterback position after just 2 seasons. So what's your confidence level in Russell Wilson right now? Scale it 1 to 10, 1 being it's somehow lower than it was during 2022, 10 being he's going to get back to that Pro Bowl, MVP caliber player that he was in Seattle. I'm at a 5.6. It's above 5.5, so like psychologically it sounds bigger. That's what she said. But I still got scars. I still have scars from the Colts overtime game, from a lot of games, if we're being honest. So I got to see it to believe it first. Let's move on and look at our next loser now. This is Lloyd Cushionberry. Unfortunately, Lloyd was almost a winner, and then right before the draft ended, they went out and drafted a potential replacement for him, right? So Denver drafted the Oregon center, Alex Forsyth, at the end of round 7 as Cushionberry comes off a season that is one to forget for the former LSU Tiger, right? He had a long stint on IR, which more or less turned into him being a healthy scratch, right? He said publicly after the season, I was healthy at the end. They kept me on IR because they didn't want to give me a roster spot. In English, healthy scratch. So injury, healthy scratch, and unfortunately, just underwhelming in general, makes it a hot seat for the 3-year center. So I think this is going to be the number 1 training camp battle where you're going to see different guys get runs with the first team offense. Cushionberry, Kyle Fuller, not the corner, the center from Seattle, and now Alex Forsyth. I think we'll all have an opportunity to win that starting gig. Now, the career PFF grades for Cushionberry, like rookie year, not good. But that's fine. You're a rookie. Improvement in year 2, but maybe not where they still want him to be to know that he's their long-term center. And then a regression in year 3 really casts a big shadow of doubt for him long-term. My next winner, is going to be Garrett Bowles. So I go Garrett Bowles as my final winner here. The reason why I'm putting Garrett Bowles as my last winner is we're talking about a player who's coming off a fractured leg and unfortunately might not be ready to go week 1. Now, despite a whole bunch of trade rumors, Denver did not move on from him, and they ultimately stuck by him, right? They did not draft a tackle that could have been a Garrett Bowles replacement. Now, like I said at the top, he's coming off a fractured leg, so it easily could have been, explainable and justifiable for Denver to draft a tackle and say, hey, Garrett, this is not a replacement. This is simply a Band-Aid until you're able to come back from a pretty serious leg injury you suffered in the middle of last season. So it wouldn't shock anyone if you were unable to go week 1, week 2, or week 3, and you started the year off on IR. Now, Bowles' PFF grades over his career, I mean, the guy peaked in 2020. That's why he cashed in more or less. The start of his career, the holdings were very troublesome. Wasn't quite sure if he was going to be a long-term guy. Then he had a breakout season in 2020, cashed in, got a nice fat contract extension, and he's got 2 years left on that extension. And here are Bowles' cap hits over the next 2 years. This year, $17.8 million. In 2024, $20 million. So if Denver was thinking, which GMs like to do, for more than just 1 year at a time, right? Going, hey, in 2024, next offseason, we might be cutting Garrett Bowles because of this cap hit. If he's not good this year, it's probably going to be a cap casualty. Let's draft his replacement this year so that we don't just start a rookie left tackle in 2024. Ultimately, they did not go that route. Doesn't rule it out if Bowles has a down season, but it definitely makes you more encouraged for Garrett Bowles long term. So if 2023 does not go well for Garrett Bowles, he might be out of here. But if this is a good season for the former Utah Ute, well, I think he's going to stay, in 2024 will be his potential last year to prove he gets another contract extension. But a lot rides on 2023, and not drafting a tackle, I think, is a subtle, vote of confidence in Garrett Bowles being this team's tackle for the next 2 seasons. All right, what is your confidence level in Russell Wilson? Let me know down below in the comment section below. If you had to give it a number 1 through 10, what would you give it? I'll be giving shout-outs to everyone who chimes in. 123 people watching. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and tuning in. 45 likes, though. We can do better. I know we can do better. Can we get to 60 likes before we start the next segment here? Pedro's at an 8.5. Budget Breakdown is at an 8. G. Vandy's at a 6. Anthony is 6.9. Very nice. Brian, a strong 8. I wish I had what you guys were drinking, because I'm at a 5.6. And I think that's pretty fair for what we saw last year. There's a lot of reason to believe that Sean Payton is going to get Russell Wilson back to where he was. Well, at least close to it, right? If he gets him to 90% of what he was, that's still a good quarterback. Might not be worth the assets you gave up and the contract you gave out, but that is still a quarterback who can not just get you to playoff games, but win you some playoff games. They were hoping to do more than just win 1 or 2 playoff games, of course, with the investment they made in him. But I think that Sean Payton can definitely help save Russell Wilson's career. He's probably the best man for the job. Better than Hackett, that's for fucking sure. Okay. Paul says solid 7.5. With time in the pocket, 9. I mean, he's just not a pocket passer, though. If you ask Russell Wilson to pick apart defenses, it's not going to end well. He's got to get on the move. You got to get the bootlegs. And now there's the concerns of, well, if he loses that mobility, what does he really bring to the table? And those are fair concerns to make, and that's part of the reason why Seattle ended up moving on from him. Yeah, sure. So, hey, we still need to get some more questions in, by the way, for our mailbag. So use hashtag Broncos, or you can super chat. I have not gotten a super chat yet today. If you would like to super chat and support the show, by all means, feel free to knock yourself out, but don't feel pressured in any way. But like the video. Come on. That's free to do at least. So if you got any questions around Denver and like just coming out of the draft, takeaways, thoughts on the picks, all that good stuff, light up the chat right now. Use hashtag Broncos, though, in your question at some point, the start, the middle, the end. Otherwise, our software cannot pull it, and we can't put it on screen. Super Chats, just skip the line and guarantee a spot on screen, just like we have one right there. Super Chat coming in. Thank you so much. We'll throw that on screen right now, include it in our mailbag as well. But I got to answer this question because $10 Super Chat, that is very, very mightily generous of you. I already see the question. I got to get the list of names in front of me here. Here's the question. Which UDFA has the best chance at making the 53-man roster? Well, we're talking about a Denver Broncos team that has a long history of UDFAs making the 53-man roster, right? Jalen Virgil made it last year. Phillip Lindsay, of course. CJ Anderson, Chris Harris. Like, there's a lot of great UDFAs who have made this roster and had impacts, too. Looking at their UDFA list here, to refresh my memory, because believe it or not, I do not memorize it. The Illinois tackle, Alex Palczewski, excuse me. He has like a FBS record for the number of starts he has. Tons of experience at Illinois, and Denver didn't draft a tackle. So he might be in the mix to compete to be that 8th or 9th or 10th offensive lineman. So Alex Palczewski out of Illinois is one to keep an eye on. They also gave a big contract out to, no, maybe I'm thinking of another team actually. If I had to go with one more, what about the safety, Devin Math? No, they drafted J.L. Skinner. I'll pivot from that. All right, I'll go P.J. Mustafer, defensive tackle out of Penn State. His brother Sam Mustafer went to Notre Dame. He was the starting center for the Bears for a little bit there. So he's got some NFL in his blood, and I'm not crazy about the interior defensive line for Denver, especially if they move on from Mike Purcell. P.J. Mustafer could be a name to keep an eye on. So him and Alec Palczewski, a tackle out of Illinois, I think they're both good players at positions of need for Denver. And you kind of need both those things to happen if you want to be a UDFA to make the roster. All right, we are going to jump into a free agent video. Text, we all good on the ones and twos? BLD2342, thank you so much for the super chat. We will include that in our mailbag later on as well. Here we go. Let's talk about some free agents for the Broncos. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, talking about free agent targets for the Paytons. Because now that the draft is over, you're going to see a flurry of signings that teams will make to fill out the remaining holes and needs in their roster. And maybe some of the names we're going to look at today, depending on by the time you're watching this, have already been signed. But first things first, we're going to go back to an oldie but a goodie here at the channel. If you want to get a shout out, if you want to get your name on screen, share today's video, share it anywhere, but if you do it on Twitter and you tag me at Matthew Petey, I'm going to give shout outs to everyone who shares this video on Twitter and tags me. So follow the instructions. It's super simple. Hit the share button, text it to a friend, to a family member, post it on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you go. But if you choose Twitter, tag me so I can give you a shout out. Now, I want to refresh everyone's memories of the picks Denver made. I also just love looking at draft picks for the next 2 or 3 months after the draft is over. Marvin Mims, Drew Sanders, Riley Moss. 3 guys in day 2, 2 players they traded up for. So expectations are high for Mims and Riley Moss. J.L. Skinner might be one of the steals of the draft in round 6. And then Alex Forsyth, a potential starting center with the 3rd to last pick in the draft. Like, I think Denver had a pretty good haul for what they had to work with. So they definitely did not fill every single need they had coming out of the draft, though. So if I had to come up with a list of 3 needs, I mean, they're not as big maybe as they were before, but defensive end is still up there for me. They didn't really add any pass rushers in this draft, and I don't think they can rely on the ones they have right now because we've never seen them do it for a full season. Running back still remains a need for this team. They did not draft a running back, and if Javonte Williams misses an excess amount of time, do they want to rely on Samaje Perine to be their 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down back? And I'm going to include offensive tackle. So we're going to look at some free agents at each of these spots here. Now, let's start with defensive end, because when I look at Denver's front 5, like Baron Browning, Zach Allen, DJ Jones, Randy Gregory, those are good players. I mean, if they were all healthy, like last year, this is a good defense. Jonathan Harris, I'm sorry, Jonathan, if you're watching, you're kind of the odd man out of this group here, right? Harris does not have a ton of experience in his career. Just 16 games, 20 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He's more or less just stepping up because Draymond Jones is gone now, and you didn't re-sign some other players from your defensive line last year. And Harris, as of now, is sitting pretty as maybe the starting defensive end on this team, and that's a spot maybe the Broncos can make an upgrade in free agency. So there are some very notable defensive ends still out there that makes sense for Denver, right? Frank Clark is one to keep in mind. Jadeveon Clowney, they made a schematical change for him, going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. Shelby Harris, I know we all know Shelby Harris. Robert Quinn's just funny. He's very good every other season. He was bad last year. So the math tells me he'll be good this year. And Akeem Hicks, he's definitely the oldest of the bunch. Longtime New Orleans Saint and Chicago Bear. I mean, when he's playing and when he's firing on all cylinders, he's a disruptor on the interior D-line. The issue is availability with Hicks at this stage in his career. Now, the one we're probably all looking at here is Shelby Harris, right? Shelby Harris last year for the Seahawks, after getting dealt 5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks, they ended up releasing him. But before that, I mean, 6 sacks with the Broncos in 2021. I love Shelby Harris. I was a bit bummed to see him be a part of that trade package, but maybe there could be a reunion to be had if they can smooth things over after the trade. Robert Quinn, like I said, I really just do this to show you guys if he's due, right? Odd number of years. Those are his years. 2019, 11.5 sacks. 2021, 18.5 sacks. That is prime trivia right there. Who remembers that? Last year, he was cheeks. But in 2023, he should be a double-digit sack guy. So maybe Denver just tries to get a little bit of juice left out of Robert Quinn. The other 3 guys we mentioned in the video, Akeem Hicks, Clowney, and Clark, those are 3 more players who definitely, well, maybe not Hicks, but Clowney and Clark still have some football left in them. So I'm going to give you guys my, I wouldn't say dream signing, but maybe my preferred signing, if you will, in just a second. But first, be the GM for me. Do you guys think Denver should sign a defensive end, another pass rusher? I'm going to avoid outside linebackers, though. They've got guys there. They could stand to add some more because of injuries. But for now, I want to focus, unfortunately, on one spot, right? Opposite Zach Allen on that defensive line. What about getting Frank Clark and having him bring his playbook from Kansas City to Denver? I mean, I know I'm being a bit sarcastic here, but maybe he can bring some sort of words of wisdom, because right now, Denver needs all of the help to beat the Chiefs. Nothing should be ruled out, right? I know it sounds a bit fan fiction. Go get Frank Clark and have him teach all of the Chiefs' secrets to the Broncos. I'm not ruling out any idea. No idea is a bad idea to beat the Chiefs. So if having Frank Clark just, before he leaves Arrowhead, steal all the playbooks with him, fine by me. Because right now, Denver needs to exhaust every option to figure out how to beat the Chiefs. And on a real note, Frank Clark could probably help in that department as a pass rusher. Plus, something about Frank Clark tells me the dude's a vengeful guy, and he might look to get some, revenge on the Chiefs for letting him go. Running back is the next need for the Broncos, and there are some notable running backs out there. Keyword notable. Might not be good, but at least we know the names of Zeke, Leonard Fournette, 2 first-round picks, Kareem Hunt, NFL rushing leader, not too many moons ago, Kenyon Drake, Dontrell Hilliard. Like, those last 2 guys are more rotational backs, and I included them because they're probably a bit more realistic if they wanted to just Band-Aid and try and bridge the gap until Javonte Williams returns, and you want to roll with Kenyon Drake and Samaje Perine. Because Denver's running back room right now, I mean, if Williams, let's say, misses 6 weeks, which that sounds kind of about right if I had to take a stab at it, who's signing up for the Samaje Perine and Tony Jones Jr. show? No offense to Tony Jones, but when I've never heard of you before, it's a little bit pumped up to think, yep, that's our third down back right there. So maybe you do try and bring in a big name, right? Zeke and Leonard Fournette, of course, the most notable guys. What's kind of interesting about Zeke is he was so washed last year, but I've never seen a washed running back have 12 touchdowns. So he's good for short line situations. So if you want to save Zeke for pass blocking and short yard situation, that's a good fit for him. Leonard Fournette, he's just an enigma, right? Playoff Lenny. If you can get there, then you've got a great running back. But if you're not there, you got a back who averaged 3.5 yards per carry last season and 3 touchdowns and was phased out of the Bucs offense and that god-awful run game that was somehow so bad it only made Denver's look even manageable. Now, Denver had an opportunity to address the running back position in the draft. They opted not to do that, right? They did not go with some of the guys that went before them, right? Here are some running backs that were picked before Denver at 83. Of course, they were never going to get Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs. Charbonnet went earlier than I expected, so I don't know if they had a high grade on him. But Kendre Miller and Tyjae Spears, Tank Bigsby, those guys were there for the taking, and Denver passed on them. So does this tell me they weren't very... The big question I have is, the Broncos just not like those running backs, right? Do they decide, hey, we're not going to force a pick just for the sake of forcing a pick because we need a running back? Or did the draft big board just not fall their way and players they wanted at certain spots in the draft were no longer available? Or door number 3, do they believe that Williams is going to return sooner rather than later, so they don't need to waste a draft pick for just a couple of weeks, and Perine can get the job done until Williams returns? We're going to wait and see, but if they're relying on Samaje Perine for a long portion of the season, this could be a moment we look back at and go, that was probably a mistake by Denver if they wanted to maximize their 2023 season, because if they knew that Williams was going to miss a long time, probably should have given Perine a nice complimentary back to work with. So if Williams is going to miss several weeks, Denver should add another running back, right? Zeke and Leonard Fournette would be fun because, let's be honest, like, at least we know their names and all-time random Broncos players material. But maybe a Dontrell Hilliard or a Kenyon Drake to, balance the workload with Samaje Perine, take 7 to 10 carries, take 5 to 8 carries off of Perine's plate so we can be a little bit more fresh every single play and spread the carries around, could help maximize the run game. Plus, I don't see a way Sean Payton trots into the 2023 season going, Russell Wilson, here's the ball. You're going to throw it 45 times a game because we don't have a ground game. Like, they're going to want to run the football. And if that's the plan, Perine cannot be a workhorse back, in my opinion, for like 8+ weeks if Williams is going to miss that much time. Now, we're going to look at some other free agent targets in just a moment. But over the draft, we picked up a bunch of new subscribers. So to all of our new viewers right now, thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel. One friendly reminder to go ahead and turn on your notifications. That way, when breaking news happens, like Denver signs Ezekiel Elliott, or someone gets cut or anything like that, you get the notification when the video goes out and you're not in the dark. So hit the notification bell icon and select it to all. Offensive line is the last position I want to look at here because they made a lot of strides, Denver did, at this spot. They added Ben Powers. They added Mike McGlinchey. They drafted Alex Forsyth. But there is still one question. Who is going to be the week 1 starting left tackle? We all know, unfortunately, Garrett Bowles suffered a fractured leg midway through the 2022 season. I'm going to go on a limb here and say, without a medical degree, breaking your leg in week 5 might not make you available week 1 the next year. I'm going to just toss that out there. So if that is the case, and week 1 is not a guarantee, and then that spills into week 2 or week 3, I hope Denver learned their lesson from last year with Billy Turner, who they signed after he failed a physical in Green Bay, and they were optimistic he'd be ready to go, and he wasn't. So I really hope history does not repeat itself here, and the Broncos regime does not bank on Bowles being ready week 1, and if he's not, they did not have a good plan B in place. So some other free agent offensive linemen here. Taylor Lewan and Donovan Smith I included just so you guys would at least see some faces and names you'd recognize. Really doesn't make a lot of sense for the Broncos, though, to have a part-time starter in Taylor Lewan. Cam Fleming, Dakota Dozier, and Chris Hubbard, those are some NFL long-time swing tackles, which Denver is looking for here to once again bridge the gap until an injured player can return. Cam Fleming, of course, the most familiar name up there. He started 15 games for Denver last season. He bounced around from left tackle to right tackle, depending on who was hurt or when Billy Turner wasn't healthy for the most part. In his career, 111 games played, 61 starts. I know it might not be the sexy pick because we want a new offensive line from last season, and bringing back some of the same cast and crew doesn't really strike a lot of confidence in this offensive line being better. But I'm telling you guys, I'd rather roll with Cam Fleming than some of the current guys on this roster right now. Like, there are a lot of players out there who have 0 NFL experience. Now, his PFF grades last year might surprise you. Like, show of hands, who thought Cam Fleming would rank top half of amongst all tackles and 29th? Like, I did not watch Broncos football last year and think that's top 30 tackle. I think he did held it, like, remember week 1 when we all learned Billy Turner was not going to start and Calvin Anderson was not going to be the starting right tackle, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? Or Cam Fleming, whatever the point is. Cam Fleming ended up having a decently good season for a guy that we very well thought might not see a lot of playing time. So with that being said, who do you guys think the Broncos should sign? We looked at 15 names today. Is it one of those 15 players? Is it someone else? Just drop a name down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see everyone later. Mailbag is the next segment, but let me know who you think Denver should sign. You can ask it in the question of a forum, like, should the Broncos sign this player? Just use hashtag Broncos or Super Chat. Speaking of Super Chats, Mr. McCullough, I saw 2 Super Chats fly in. We're going to get those on screen for you guys in just a moment here. The O-line was not healthy last season. This is true. This is very true. Okay, so we start with this Super Chat to start things off. BLD2342. Next Super Chat coming in from Kitchener Leslie. Broncos Breakdown. Tell all your friends. Also, what pieces should we get as UDFAs? Which veterans will be available? Well, good question. For the UDFAs, like, UDFA is not about signing for need, right? They are undrafted free agents. You're not finding a UDFA and going, we really need more corners. Let's target only corner UDFAs. You are hoping that one of these guys could even make the roster regardless of the position they play. If it comes at a need, awesome, right? Like last year, for example, Jalen Virgil and Brandon Johnson were both UDFAs to make the 53-man roster, in my opinion. Brandon Johnson with an asterisk. But they didn't need wide receivers going into the training camp. They had Jeudy, Sutton, Patrick, Hamler, right? Kendall Hinton. So the point being is, if they can find any UDFA talent at any position, I'd love that. I'd prefer it to be an offensive line or defensive line, but I'll take it anywhere. As for veterans that could be added, tell me if you get a notification from us saying the Broncos have signed Frank Clark. You wouldn't be a bit pumped up about that. I would. I think Frank Clark is a good football player still. I'd like to see him play for the Broncos. I know he was an enemy for a long time, but bygones be bygones. Let's steal some of their trash and look at it as treasure. So that would be my pick. We had one more Super Chat. I did. Let's look at our next Super Chat. Mr. Leslie, thank you so much. Robert, 2424, with the drafting of a Riley Moss, PS2, and more defensive playmakers, is the return of no-fly zone. Also, sign Shelby Harris. Return of the no-fly zone back. Like, I can't get there just yet. I can mid-season. But right now, Simmons and Pat Surtain alone, 2 flight attendants can't make two pilots can't make the no-fly zone. You need the crew, right? Have you ever been waiting to board your flight and the pilots are there, but one of the stewardess is not there, and you're like, just take off without it? We don't need the beverage service. It's just a 2-hour flight. Well, when the beverage service comes around, you're a little happy you waited, maybe. So I'm going to need Riley Moss or Damari Mathis to stand out as an opposite corner of Pat Surtain, and only then will I say the no-fly zone is returning. It will have returned once that opposite CB2 is Pro Bowl-ish level. When they've got 2 Pro Bowl corners and Justin Simmons, boom, there are no aircrafts going over Mile High. That is when the no-fly zone returns. That is the line in the sand. Robert, thank you so much for the Super Chat, though. Can't express my gratitude enough for everyone who supports the show. We've got a mailbag coming up next on the show. Oh, we got a first-time Super Chatter. Official Juan. After this Super Chat, if we don't get any more, we'll jump into that mailbag. Keep getting those questions in, though. Hashtag Broncos. And all the Super Chats we're getting right now, those will lead the mailbag show. But Official Juan 400 next up. First-time Super Chatter. Should the Broncos sign Elliott to a 1-year deal? Zeke Elliott is washed. He averages 3.8 yards per carry. You want to know how to get Zeke Elliott to be a good football player again? McCullough? I have an idea. You ready? Do not let him take a carry in anything more than 3 yards away from the end zone. Then, if he averages 3 yards a carry, he will get you a touchdown from the 1, 2, or 3 yard line. Make that his role, and pass blocking. And he can be a good player for your team still. I know he's a bit of a meme right now because like Pollard was better than him last year in Dallas. So it's like, what? Why are we signing Zeke? Save him for short line situations so P. Ryan doesn't have to get, black and blued up and tons of bruises down there. And let Zeke handle the pass protection on 3rd and 9, obvious passing situations from your own 35. Save P. Ryan some of those snaps because you might need him for a long stretch of the year. So I'm not opposed to signing Zeke. Now, if they sign Zeke and on 1st and 10 from their own 25, they hand it off to him and they get 2 yards, well, that's your fault, Sean. Like, you probably shouldn't have done that. No one advertised to use Zeke in that way. But in the red zone and pass protection, yeah, I really don't have an issue with it. I do not. We got another first-time super chatter. Thank you, Official Juan. And what's going on, Yoke? Thoughts on Sean Payton smoking? Kind of shame on me for not, including this in the video already. The issue was, if you're, from my perspective here, and then I'll answer your question, that video leaked at an awful time. When the draft's going on, I got to talk about the draft. I can't then deviate to Sean Payton ripping a bong. If he did that in July, my goodness, that'd be the video every day. But I got to talk about the draft when it's draft week. So my thoughts on Sean Payton smoking, one, there's a couple thoughts. One, I don't think they're testing for weed anymore. I don't think, if you're curious, are we going to get in trouble for this? I don't think so. I'm not sure what the rule is on coaches smoking. But it's legal in Colorado. So, I think it's fine from, a rule standpoint. Number two, he's one of the fucking boys. I have no issue with Sean Payton ripping a bong, right? You can do it in the offseason. Don't do it on Sundays. Don't do it during game prep during the week. But in April, I have to assume that was done on 420, right? If anything, he just wants to embrace himself in the culture. When Sean Payton got hired by the Saints in 2005, 2006, I hoped he blacked out on Bourbon Street. That's what you want your coach of a city to do, to embrace the culture. Not that weed's the whole culture of Colorado, but I'd be lying if I was saying that wasn't an element of what goes on at Mile High. So, I don't really, I'm not going to be an old man and say, no, you can't do that. No, it's okay. I'm not all that butthurt about it. One more super. David, think we can beat KC this year? I think my silence kind of, unfortunately, answers that question. But I think, it's the NFL. That is the beauty of the National Football League. It's a league of parity. The Chiefs aren't going to win every single matchup for the rest of the time. Patrick Mahomes will not go undefeated against Denver in his career. Tom Brady did not go undefeated against any AFC East team in his career. Okay? Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers did not go undefeated against all the NFC North opponents. Same for Drew Brees. Same for Peyton Manning. Mahomes is off to a spectacular start. We have to give it to him within the division. But I don't know if this is going to be the year, right? Maybe. But I don't have anything to stand on to say so other than it's the National Football League. Crazy stuff happens every Sunday. Don't rule it out. That is the only reasoning I can actually give. Not X's and O's. Denver's lining up to exploit Kansas City's weaknesses. No. You got Andy Reid. You got Patrick Mahomes. They moved down from Tyreek Hill and got better. So why am I supposed to believe they're going to be worse next year other than maybe a hangover? Okie dokie. Let's jump into a mailbag. Mr. McCullough, we're going to start the mailbag off just one by one, those supers right there. Okay. Here we go. Let's jump into a live Broncos mailbag. What's going on, Broncos country? Mailbag edition here at the channel. I'm going to answer questions that you guys had that aired during our live show, which was Tuesday at 3 o'clock Mountain Time, 4 o'clock Central. So we're going to start off with a super chat coming in from BLD2342. Which UDFA has the best chance at making the 53-man roster? Denver's got a long and rich history of UDFAs making the 53-man roster. They had one last year. They've had one for several straight years. I'm looking at the list right now. I'm going to give you two names to kind of be a coward and double my chances. But PJ Mustafa from Penn State, he's good, and he comes at a position of need for Denver. Interior defensive line, in my opinion. The other one I'm going to go with is the Illinois tackle, Alex Palczewski. Denver doesn't really have a clear-cut swing tackle right now. So there is a spot for a UDFA like that to emerge and maybe crack the 53-man roster. Kitchener Leslie, tell all your friends, Broncos Breakdown. Also, what pieces should we get as UDFAs? Which veterans will be available? Well, for UDFAs, I'm going to steal the answer I had from the last question. As for, designated positions, you just take the best player available, right? You just look for talent, you look for hidden gems, and you find a spot for them later on if you're crowded in that room. As for veteran players that are still available, depending on when you're watching this, some of these guys might have been signed as we're recording this live on Tuesday. I think defensive end would be a nice get for Denver, or running back. Frank Clark at the defensive end spot. Shelby Harris, I would love a reunion. Running backs, call me crazy. Call me just a big name chaser. Zeke, for short line situation and pass protection, wouldn't hate it. Robert, 2424, with the drafting of Riley Moss, PS2, and more defensive playmakers, is the return of no-fly zone back. Also, sign Shelby Harris. I'm with you on signing Shelby Harris. Would like to see him come back and help this defensive line, pair up with Zach Allen, be opposite him. As for the no-fly zone return, you got two key pieces of it, right? You got your pilot and Pat Surtain and your co-pilot in Justin Simmons. But we all know, waiting for Southwest, they will not take off without all the stewardess and all the flight attendants. So you need that ensemble too. And if Riley Moss and or Damari Mathis can be a near-ish Pro Bowl level, I mean, it's tough to somewhat grade players at a Pro Bowl level because the Pro Bowl is an absolute joke right now. But you know Pro Bowl talent when you see it. If you get those three, we can get in-flight beverage service and we can get the no-fly zone back. I'm going to need something on Damari Mathis or Riley Moss definitively with my own eyes to believe it before I can say it's returned. Official Juan 400, should the Broncos sign Elliott to a one-year deal? Like I was saying earlier, I would not be upset about this, right? If I get a notification that Denver has signed Zeke, would not be opposed. Now, Zeke somewhat came out with a preemptive list of where he would sign. Did not include the Broncos. It had the Cowboys. And this was a rumored list, if I remember correctly, too. Cowboys, Bengals, kind of go back to the Buckeye State. The Eagles were on it, and one more team, and I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. But if no team comes calling, yeah, I think Zeke in short yardage situation kind of alleviate the burden, the workload for Samaje Perine, especially if Javonte Williams is out more than just 4, 5, 6 weeks and we approach 8, 9, or 10. Yeah, I think adding another running back would be a good move for Sean and George Paton. Yolk, thoughts on Sean Payton smoking? This is the biggest question in all of Denver right now. I'll try and keep it short, but I don't have an issue with it, right? I'm not a cop. I'm not DEA, so I don't have a big beef to squash with Sean Payton smoking. He's somewhat trying to become one of the locals, right? He wants to fit in. If Sean Payton got blackout on Bourbon Street when he was hired by the Saints, I think Saints fans would say, one of us, one of us. Sean Payton wants to rip a bong on 420? Cool beans. Welcome to Mile High, bro, and way to be high. So, with that being said, that's our Sean Payton smoking segment of the show. David, think we can beat KC this year? It's the National Football League. Crazy stuff happens all the time. Do I have a path or a plan, an X's and O's standpoint for getting it done? No. My plan is, it's the NFL, crazy shit happens. That's not much of a strategy to go in with right now, but do they have a chance? Sure. Tom Brady did not go undefeated against the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins in his long career. I'm going to be confident that Patrick Mahomes will not be the same in the AFC West or with the Broncos. First-time super chatter right now, Mason Greenwood. Should the Broncos sign Trent Harris from the XFL? I have not watched much XFL football. I'll be honest. I reserve this football temple of a body, if you will, for the fall only. So if an XFL star emerges, yeah. I mean, why not bring him in for a, maybe not 90-man roster spot, but for a audition, a practice, if you will. But I don't have strong feelings one way or the other when it comes to signing XFL players. Broncos 69. Should the Broncos bring back Philip Lindsay? Ooh, talking about running backs here and talking about an all-time Broncos legend and UDFA. So we're really hitting all the buttons right there. Philip Lindsay, stats over the last 4 seasons. Thank you, McCullough, working on the fly. Good producer. We're talking about a 1,000-yard rusher back in 2019, right? Pro Bowl running back as a UDFA. But he has fallen off a cliff, unfortunately. Fell out of favor in Houston. He was briefly with the Colts. Now he's in the XFL. So talking about bringing back XFL guys. Listen, I think Denver should sign a running back. I saw a story about Lindsay wanting to come back. I'm sure he wants to come back to Denver. I'm sure he wants to come back to the NFL. There's more or less, a whole new regime in place than when Philip Lindsay was originally signed as a UDFA. So I don't know how deep the connections run to Dove Valley. But they could use an extra running back. So I will not say no to any running backs right now. So let's show the guy some love, though. Let's type his old jersey number 30 down in the comment section below if you want to bring back Philip Lindsay to, help keep the run game afloat until Javonte Williams can return. Budget breakdown NFL. Will the Broncos have a top 5 run game if Javonte Williams returns strong, considering most of our offensive linemen are elite or above average run blockers? The issue I run into, budget breakdown, is Saquon Barkley and J.K. Dobbins are 2 running backs most recently who came back from not necessarily identical injuries, but major ACL and knee ligament tear injuries, where it was not your average ACL recovery where it's, 8 to 10 months and you're as good as new. Now we have this, great medical experience or medical profession in 2023. I'm not shocked if Javonte Williams comes back and has a similar return like KJ Hamler last year, where maybe it's a bit on the early side, they test it out, and they have to shut it back down again. If Javonte Williams comes back and doesn't skip a beat, yeah, Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, Quinn Miners, those are offensive linemen who love to run the football. They get offended when they are asked to pass protect because they don't get to pancake and run people over like bulldozers. But I do have concerns about even when Williams does return, let's say it's week 7. Don't expect Javonte Williams to rush for 100 yards in his first game back. He might not even get more than 10 carries. He's coming off that serious of a knee injury, unfortunately. Jeremiah Williams, how do you feel about trading KJ Hamler for Ed Oliver or KJ and Lloyd Cushionberry for Ed Oliver? This is kind of like your bad fantasy football trade in your fantasy football league. That one guy who just wants to give you a bunch of garbage for one good player. Ed Oliver, a top pick for the Bills 4 years ago now, has been good. Probably a bit underwhelming for where he was selected in the draft. I don't see why Buffalo would swap Ed Oliver, a starting defensive lineman, for a guy like KJ Hamler, who unfortunately is still making his way back from a serious injury and has not looked like the second-round pick really once in his career, outside of some nice touchdown long plays, but not over a consistent time span. Make sure to subscribe, by the way, if you are not already. We continue to try and grow this channel, and our next milestone is 14,000 subscribers. So if you are looking for a Broncos YouTube channel this offseason that's going to put out content during the dog days of the offseason, you are at the right spot. Hit that sub button down below. Mountain Life 420, this is where Sean Payton was. Any chance the Broncos trade for Dalvin Cook since they didn't draft a running back? Well, we are filming this live on Tuesday, so hopefully this does not get dated, but I don't think Denver can be ruled out of any running back acquisition. I think they will do their homework on running backs. Dalvin Cook is very intriguing because he does have that George Paton connection, and as fans and media members, what we love to do most is connect dots and go, well, if Payton was there, surely he will want Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is coming off a bit of a down-ish season. He was still 1,100-yard rusher and 8 touchdowns, but 4.4 yards per carry, that was a low for him in his career, and it feels like the needle is pointing down. I think Dalvin Cook is probably going to be a Miami Dolphin when it's all said and done. I just don't think Denver wants to give up what it might cost for Dalvin Cook, a day 3-ish pick that's not just a 7th rounder, when they're not looking for a running back long term. They're looking for someone to just hold down the fort until Javonte Williams can return. But what do you guys think? Should the Broncos trade for Dalvin Cook? Yes or no? Keep it simple. Y for yes or N for no down in the comment section below. Tyler J, a 6 TBH. I would have loved the UCLA QB who went early, or Max Duggan from TCU. Yeah, Denver did not pick a quarterback in this draft class. It's a bit of a surprise to me. I don't know if the board just didn't work out the way they wanted it to. Where they're like, hey, we like, say, Aiden O'Connell, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Jake Haener, but we don't like them enough in round 3. So if they're there in round 6, awesome. But they were not there in round 6. So they didn't want to force a pick maybe, and the guys they liked at the respective rounds, they weren't there. So as for adding a quarterback, I think that probably bodes well for a little bit more vote of confidence for Russell Wilson moving forward. Last question coming in from Pedro Lucas. Which of the rookies should be starters? We can pull up the rookie class, Mr. McCullough. The 5 players that Denver selected. I've got a sleeper for you guys. I've got a sleeper. Now, they started off, of course, with Marvin Mims. Now, barring any injuries, he's going to be a special teamer early in his career, and he's going to have some, maybe some jet sweeps, right? Or some design plays to flood him down the sideline. Drew Sanders, barring any injuries, he's probably going to be the 3rd string inside linebacker, right? The next guy after Josie Jewell or Alex Singleton. Riley Moss is going to have a fair shot of starting. He will compete with Damari Mathis for that other CB2 job. J.L. Skinner and Alex Forsyth, oddly enough, their last 2 picks in the draft, might have the best chance of starting, right? Because if Caden Stearns still has hip injuries early on, and they don't return Kareem Jackson, J.L. Skinner could be starting next to Justin Simmons as a 6th rounder. And if Alex Forsyth just flat out beats Lloyd Cushionberry for the starting center job, boom. Your last 2 picks might have the best path of actually starting just because they don't have a ton of ice to break through above them. So that would be my pick right there of best chance for a rookie to start. I'll go with J.L. Skinner. He fell in the draft because of a pec injury he suffered before the combine. Really good missile flying type radar, safety out of Boise State. That's going to do it for us on this mailbag. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Hit that sub button down below, and we'll see everyone later. We got Super Chat coming in here, but hey, let me know, who should the Broncos sign? AFX Apocalypse has made his way to the Broncos Breakdown. What's going on, man? Remember when you said Stetson Bennett wasn't getting drafted? I do. I had to pay the piper, a 25. So now here's the thing. For those of you that aren't in on the inside joke here, I made a bet a year ago, right now-ish, with our co-worker here at Chat Sports, Harrison Graham. I said that Stetson Bennett would not get drafted. I hate Stetson Bennett. Hate's a strong word. I think he's a bad quarterback. No, I'm going to stand by it. I don't like Stetson Bennett. So he did get drafted, of course. I was ruined. Shambles. All that. But I'm making a new bet. I've got a new quarterback. My new quarterback, I don't hate this guy, but I think he's overrated. KJ Jefferson out of Arkansas. Peaked in 2021, regression in 2022. KJ Jefferson will not get quarterback. That's my new guy, AFX Apocalypse. Mason Greenwood, another super chat. Jeudy and a 4th for a 2nd and a 2024 3rd. So Jerry Jeudy and a 4th round pick, and you get back a 2nd and a 3rd. No, I'd probably rather have Jerry Jeudy still. I don't think the value's all that off because you are getting a 2nd and a 3rd. I think if you really wanted to make George Paton consider this, you'd probably have to bump it up from a 4th to like a 5th or a 6th. 4th round picks are the start of day 3. Teams value that still. There are guys in rounds 2 and 3 that slip out. And you saw last year, you had a lot of trades being made for guys to move up in the 4th round to get a player. Teams view 4th rounders still pretty highly, despite it not being day 2. A 5th or a 6th, maybe you could get George Paton to agree since he's getting 2 day 2 picks. But I think he wants to see Jerry Jeudy continue to have the success he had at the end of last season, and he doesn't want to sell out for a 2nd or 3rd rounder. So I don't think this trade goes through. I think if you made it Jeudy in like a 6, Denver would consider it. But right now, they're probably not even gonna pick up the phone if that's the offer. We'll answer some more questions. If we don't get any more super chats, no harm, no foul. We'll pack it up and get on out of here. Really appreciate everyone for taking time out of their Tuesday to come hang out with us. What should we do to improve the pass rush? You got to hope that Randy Gregory stays healthy. Like, that's plan A, right? That is what George Paton is banking on. His big free agent acquisition was really good to start last year with Bradley Chubb. Then the inevitable injury struck. If Randy Gregory is healthy, along with Baron Browning, like if those guys play even 15 or more games, like that's a good outside linebacker duo. And Zach Allen is an up-and-coming defensive end. So what should Denver do to improve? Right now, they got to hope they stay healthy. If they don't, then you got to look at improvements. And that might be a free agent signing, right? Like a Frank Clark or a Akeem Hicks or a Shelby Harris. But I think right now Denver is banking on health. And that's a scary bet to make for this team because they have not had it lately. Rhett Ladd, why do we still have McManus? I know he had a bit of a down year last year. It all got off to a shitty start when they trotted him out for like an 89-yard field goal against the Seahawks in week 1. He had some good makes. He had some bad misses. His cap hit's not high. I thought he might have been like a cap casualty, if you will, of Denver going, you know what? Maybe it's time we move on. He's the only player left from the 2015 Super Bowl roster. Why do they still have him? I'm guessing they did not identify a better option. If he has a down year next year or this upcoming season, yeah, he's probably done. All right, we're going to get one more question on screen. Otherwise, afterwards, we will sign off. But hey, thank you guys so much. It's been a lot of fun here. Dimitri, bro, that's fine. I agree. There are some great pass rushes out there. But the way out the whole defense from safety to nose tackle looks fine. We are fine. Like, we're myself included, we're talking about a defense that was awesome last year, right? If the offense just scored 2 touchdowns a game, this team makes the playoffs. Is it 2 touchdowns? It was like they scored like 16 or 17 points a game. This team made the playoffs. So they did lose a key piece, their defensive coordinator, Evero. We're going to find out if it was all him or the defense. They also lost Draymond Jones, and they lost Bradley Chubb midseason. Some guys are a year older. Some guys are closer to their prime now. But I still think there's a lot of optimism around this defense that they're still going to be one of the better units like they were last season. Defense is a funny thing. There's not a lot of consistency in defense, right? Like offenses can stay consistent year after year after year with little change. Defenses with the same unit sometimes can go up and down because there's just things that turnover. Like there's bounces that go your way, right? If a receiver has one go through his hands and it's a pick six, like boom, the defense gets pumped up and things just start going your way. If you don't get those breaks, even with the same guys, it can be like very frustrating to go, what happened? Like, we're all the same starters, more or less, but we are way apart than we were last year. So defense is kind of weird that way. It's not going to be consistent year in and year out, even if you have some of the same pieces or the same core and foundation. That is it for today's live show. Thank you all so much for coming in and hanging out. Like I said, talking shop, talking football. This was awesome. For everyone that super chatted, really appreciate that. Can't express just how much that means to me here. So thank you guys so much. McCullough, thank you for pushing all the buttons behind the scenes. We are going to sign off and see everyone later.